Chapter 47. The Abomination and the Miracle.
Mimic!
A voice, matured and accomplished, both offended and humored, escapes the housing of the reborn. It rings as though the sound of his vocals bounce amongst corridors, long and high, before departing from his shrouded temple. Jai is startled. Her previous seedlings hadn't even exhibited this degree of free will. Her expression transforms from an aghast discovery to a curious investigation.
Yes. Do you mean to tell me that you are indeed the true Embual? The same Embual that faced Tiamatu alongside Parias and sealed him away all that time ago?
Her eyes beam up at him, her vision daring to pierce beyond his fog.
Could I be considered a sage if I had no mastery over the bridge betwixt?
How like a sage, how like Jai, to answer a question by posing another.
Of course. My apologies. This is a welcome surprise, believe me.
She smirks, half satisfied at the reborn. She does not do thus in spite or in disbelief towards his response. It is spawned by an insatiable curiosity, and such a smirk hints at a promise to inquire further once this war is settled. Ought they both endure and see it through to the end, that is. Rekindling my regard of the predicament at hand, I turn to observe Tiamatu's condition. His shoulders sag, arms dangling, chin lolled, posture slouched and eyes vulnerable. A pathetic poise unbefitting of a god, unfaithful to his loosely held equanimity, now unclasped and relinquished. Without reservation, he is withdrawn and retreated into the fret of his mind.
And thus it has come to this,
the failed immortal utters just under his cold breath, which carries it to our awareness as a passage in the wind. The pale god grips the mirroring wickets of his ribcage, thrusting and breaking them wide and agape. The coming bones bursting through his flesh drag the strings of meat and ligaments behind and between them.
Bear witness.
The god's voice struggles, still reliant upon the wind in its delivery to us.
Bear witness the cultivation of all burden which I am compelled to ferry across this endless river of time.
He uncovers, behind his foremost organs, something I cannot name. Cowering from the now exposed moonlight of Cedril, a childlike organism clings to the dorsal of Tiamatu's heart and spinal column. It peers with its madness-stricken eyes from within the internal shadows. Embual warns,
He is not only the god of all suffering. He is a vessel for it, as he has opened his gates. This abomination is the byproduct of pain, agony, and misfortune. Hardship, misery, and torment. Affliction, envy, and hatred. Poverty, disease, and famine. It is a living bane of existence. There is no consciousness about it. No soul. No will to its nature. It will act upon the whims of its suffering alone. Tiamatu had not been pushed to this extreme when your ancestor and I first confronted him. Yet now he is willing to exert himself to the fringe of both his physicality and immortality.
He pauses, allowing us time to thoroughly digest what we are being told. After some moments, he continues indifferently.
This monstrosity can perish. It can be killed. It is not bestowed with an everlasting life. It is but the sum of the suffering gathered and garnered by its immortal vessel. It may be expunged. However, it will likely be your most arduous undertaking yet.
He closes. If it can be killed, then... A disruptive tunnel, barely visible, followed by a deep and lagging thunderous boom, cuts Payman's declaration short. His left arm, too, is abbreviated. A few droplets of blood sound against the petals below me, coating them in the tinge of a deep red. This is my blood. The pain arrives seconds after the assault. My kidney has been slashed. Turning to face Tiamatu, the unambiguous origin of the assault, I discover that he is ridden to the crust, recoiled from the ejection. That thing leapt out of him, and it reaped Payman's arm, wounding me in the same instant. I could scantly perceive it. It moved alike his orb of calamity. It is as though it hadn't happened at all were I to ignore a missing appendage and a leaking organ. It could have killed any of us had it chosen to right then. Any hesitancy, reluctance, or letting down of our guards is welcoming death from this point forth. The evidence for this has been clearly demonstrated and is beyond one's ability to ignore. Payman, are you all right? Granting him only a fragment of my peripherals, I see that he nods and conjures from his amputated nub a replacement limb of twisting wood. He wavers his new fingers in confirmation. Yes, fortunately he took from me my wooden arm. It is trivial for me to replace it. We all scan our surroundings in a fanatical anticipation, but there is no hint of it anywhere. Ambual was wise to this being's composition. This thing truly has no will. Had it one, we would already be dead. I sensed no intent before its attack. It simply lashed out in reaction to its suffering. As I conclude my statement, my drifting Drakin's eye view captures sight of the deviant, and not by peering downwards, no. I could scour this entire world in a mere handful of minutes in my current form. I abandoned my searching of the ground once I had circled a radius of a few thousand kilama. I discerned that there exists a likelihood that the creature may possess the capability of flight, and thus may float high above my seeing compass. Thus, I gazed upwards and discovered its whereabouts. The creature does not dawdle in the sky, but rather it is beached upon the celestial shores of Cedril, and it rips the moon to shreds as though it were mere parchment, crashing into it with a force that hollows its dark side. I stare upwards with my corporeal eyes to verify the validity of what my Drakin's eye view perceives as truth. Jai, Embual, and Payman trace and follow my surveying pupils in unison. We are all struck by the rate at which the depraved monster is excising the lunar body. Swiftly and fitfully, Cedril's moonlight splinters and fades. Upon its conclusion, the unfathomable destroyer returns, hunched ahead of us, clasping its elbows, convulsing and shivering. Nervous yet unthinking, a child variant of Tiamatu in appearance alone. Its stature too sensitive for an immortal, its stare too unknowing for a god, its purpose too idle and vacant to be considered alive. My faculty of sight grows disoriented. My veins distend, pushing to free themselves from the confines of my skin. My breathing becomes heavy and my balance falters. What is happening? I feel weak and dizzied. Even my hearing is impacted, and heavily so. I cannot discern whose voice it is that calls out to me. I must have been tarnished by some variety of toxin when sliced by the delinquent god, a potent and foreign one that even my Draking blood cannot repel. As I slip into a collapse, someone suspends my plunge. My vision is too blurred to ascertain as to who, though it is clear that the abrasion of their touch is not that of a familiar one. The skin is too sensitive for it to be Payman or Embual, and Jai is now too frail to physically carry me. The tightness in my side begins to subside. Gradually, my blood vessels calm, and it feels as though the toxin is being siphoned from within me. As the quick-acting poison seeps out, my senses return, and my questions are answered. I transition from that of the embrace of my savior, reserved from the pit of my downfall, to keeping her from her own. Corvana! My rescuer is you? I lay the blight-stricken Tomasa down as gently as I may. Her eyes are dilated, and her skin is dreadfully paling. Why would you? Where did you? She had used her ability to take upon herself what ought have killed me. She guides my hands to her stomach, which is bloated and protruding. You're with child!
He is Sabas.
She voices this through her immense strain. So this is her true cause in her tracking and pursuit of him. He was to be the father of her child. He had abandoned them, and those are the memories she prohibited me from invading back then. All of this time I carried with me a haunting shade, ever since our encounter with her. This is the roguish phantom revealed. My instincts were cluing me to that there had been more to Corvana beyond what Saba had lured me to believe. He deserted her to embark on our quest. The unborn can be saved. He is kicking, struggling to live as his mother fades. I extend a Draken's claw from my index fingertip and slit her womb vertically with caution. Against all of the agents of death on this day, life reigns and begins anew. Only to act as witnesses to this miracle of creation did our attentions avert their paranoia of the ill-fated Dementor in our presence. Unlike the child of suffering, this child was struck by Vespok's moonlight, not Cedril's, which no longer exists. And unlike the child of suffering, this child embraces it, entering our world as a natural born, announcing its arrival with a healthy and wholesome cry. His facial structure predominantly resembles the father, but his mother's lighter skin tone and darker hue of hair mark him as hers. Payman cradles the child into a woven nest, wrapped in an assemblage of dancing flowers, cushioning herbs, and delicate moss. With controlled impact, I blast a grave into our lonely island by the flailing of my star reader and lay my martyr, Corvana, to rest. The dark sun pays us no mind. It simply wallows in its own being for now, cursing itself without word or thought. We've been graced, blessed with these moments of respite. However, we must be vigilant. The slightest neglect would mean our end, and yet for those few exiguous moments of tending to the newborn and burying his mother, no evil, by barring of a perfect force, could interrupt us. Payman erects a swath of vines and trunks around the newborn and his cot, as he had done with Jai during Tiamatu's final salvo. With new life secured, we have renewed our faith. Our total awareness returns to the ill-wrought child.